This special motherfucking sedition live from the streets of Resistance in Toronto was made possible by slaves like you. Thank you very much.
Us lesbian billionaires have stood by for ages as the wealthiest and most powerful nations have created a world in which capitalism, racism, ableism, patriarchy, and colonialism reign supreme. Well, commoners, stay in your place. Well, we can no longer stay silent because all of you just won't shut up. You anti-capitalist queers are getting louder and louder.
It's the end of the world as we know it. I feel fine.
Good morning, slaves, and welcome to another edition of It's the End of the World as we know it and I feel fine. A gender-bending roller coaster ride of fun. I'm your host, the Stimulator, and on the second day of the rebellions against the global criminal syndicate, also known as the G20, a coalition of queers, homos, trans folk, gender benders and blenders, fierce femmes, leather daddies and mamas, poets, voguers, artists, brazen butches, freaks, riot girls and boys, MCs, porn stars, singers, dancers, and ruckus causers, assembled an impressive posse of creative resistance. As expected, the motherfucking police had no love for queer folks and beat up and arrested a member of the resistance.
The cops, it looked like they had taken down someone hard. They really were beating them. When they pulled him up, he was bloody across his face. They dragged him off inside. They're not answering questions as to why they're arresting.
But that unfortunate incident did not dampen the lovely mood of the march, and things brightened up a bit when the march paused for a massive display of public affection. But making out was not the only thing on the minds of this lively crew of queer radicals. A big gripe that folks were bringing to the forefront was the corporatization of the annual Pride Parade and the censorship of pro-Palestinian queer folks. Leonard Zuniga explains.
Queers Against Israel Apartheid got banned, got censored this year by Pride Toronto, and basically the queer community, we just created a coalition called Pride Coalition for Free Speech, where we are demanding Pride Toronto to remove the ban of the word Israel Apartheid.
Susan Gappa of the Rainbow Health Network explained the demand of transsexual and transgender folks in Canada.
One thing that the state can do to alleviate the harassment and discrimination that trans people face is to give them explicit, clear human rights protection. This is incredibly important that trans people, transsexual and transgender people, have the same rights that other disadvantaged groups have.
But other folks are sick and tired of petitioning the motherfucking state and had other ideas.
Girls, fuck shit up! Revolution! And nothing but! We deserve what we need on tables from corporate grief! More than just equality! Liberation from poverty! No more short-term band-aid fixes! Say hell yeah when they call you bitches!
While it sucks that Zionists and greedy corporate pubic flushers have infiltrated the gay pride scene in many cities, It's inspiring to know that there's a growing radical anti-capitalist, anti-colonial gay movement that connects to the discrimination gay folks have suffered to the struggles of many other fucked over peeps. To dig deep into the radical queer movement, I spoke with Ro Velasquez of the Queer Resistance Network. Hey Ro, how the fuck are you?
Amazing. I can't believe this happened and we pulled it off, which was awesome.
Okay, so you're gay and you are protesting the G20. What the fuck?
A lot of people don't make the connection that, for example, queer people are people of color. Queer people are criminalized every day by police brutality. Queer people are not let into this country because of their gender and their immigration status. Queer people are poor with disabilities. Queer people need special diets. They need the welfare rates to go by 40%. And this is not happening in our city. And we say to the international community that Harper is wrong, that Harper does not pride himself in women's rights or human rights or queer people's rights, because as soon as we have human rights here, he forgets about everything else. He forgets about immigration status. He forgets about special diets. He has budget cuts on our education, our children's education. And queer and trans people, our mothers, our fathers, our parents, they are going through the perils of the immigration system. And we're saying this is how our identities are. We have a history of resisting police brutality, a history of resisting against the state's repression in our bodies. And we're saying as queer people of color, as migrants, we've had enough of your lies.
So how well do the G20 countries treat queer folks?
What we see is that, while one country can pride itself in queer rights, so we have gay marriage here, we have all these freedoms and pride, which have been censored, by the way, but, this is not being brought to the table. Gender justice is not being brought to the table at an international level at all. So what kind of, hypocritical opinion is that of Harper, that he can have some rights here while people all over the world are being victims of hate crimes just down the street, like in Buffalo and in the States. These are issues that are not being talked about in an international level because we're not important enough. The only important thing right now is the economy, which also affects queers, right? But we're saying our safety, our streets are not safe right now. Toronto is not safe, Canada is not safe, and neither is the rest of the world, and that's why we're here taking the streets.
The anniversary of the Stonewall riots is coming up. Why is it important to remember that event?
People who know the history of Stonewall know that this was a police raid on bathhouses and on clubs, especially for gays and lesbians and whatever. But yeah, and it was a gay and lesbian raid by the police, by the state. And we need to remember that the police is not our friend, that the state has never been our friend, and the only way that they can be our friends is because they want to manage us like they're managing poverty, like they're managing, budget cuts and whatever. There
are plenty of protests that queer folks can take part in this week during the G20 rebellions. Do you have any advice for them?
I'm saying be safe, travel with people, travel in groups. I also know that many people are not out, and that is very okay. You don't need to be out, and to just, check yourself and see where you're at.
Thanks, Ro. And that about does it for this edition of It's the End of the World as We Know It and I Feel Fine. Big ups to Jelmer for sticking some cash in my tip jar to keep this coverage going. Halbasa. Stay tuned to Stimulator.tv tomorrow for a toxic tour of Toronto, and all weekend long as the motherfucking resistance turns up the heat on the G20 meetings. Now, who took the bump on the bump palom?
Remember, kids, you can podcast high-quality video of this show at submedia.tv.